'Tis I, your old pal, King Chuck, and I want to tell you a story about the assassination attempt last year with Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. And so the story was, Michael Moore wrote an article about what happened to him when he was 18 in 1972. He voted, his first election ever that he voted in was for the Democratic primary here in the great state of Michigan. And he voted for a woman named Shirley Chisholm. Chisholm was the first Black American female to run for president. And she only got less than 1% of the vote in the primary here in Michigan because of a very horrific event. George Wallace, who was the governor of Alabama, was the victim of an assassination attempt himself. And the big difference was he was left paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. Now, George was a hardcore racist. He was a segregationist. He believed, as a matter of fact, he even had a saying. I think it was something like segregation yesterday, segregation now, segregation forever. And he was and it proved how the Democrats way back when, and even today, they're a Big Tent party where normal ideas don't seem to exist for some people. I mean, some people are very, very far to the left, and they want free speech. They want a woman's right to choose. They want, to tax the wealthiest people in America, tax the oligarchs, you name it. Yeah, but, there's some people who are like, we're not into that. But, hey, we like gay people. And that's kind of how some of these people are like, we are liberal, but we're not into that, or that. It's kind of like calling yourself an ice cream shop and all you sell are hamburgers, but hey, you do sell, some, with those mini ice cream, those little balls of ice cream that you see at the hospital. Anyway, so the rest of the story was that now everyone is having a lot of sympathy for this Charlie Kirk guy. And Kirk was considered by many as somebody who used his words to bring young people to the right through his Turning Point organization. And I'm like, and he did it by spreading hate. And I shake my head when I see that stupid AI generated image of Charlie Kirk standing next to Abraham Lincoln and John Lennon and Martin Luther King. It's like, to me, it's like seeing an image of Hitler hugging a Jew. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Charlie Kirk was not a hero. I don't give a fuck. He was a very sick man who hated gay people. I mean, he was a true believer in Leviticus, which is that verse. And it's like, he was a big believer in Leviticus, and yet I had to wonder if he ate seafood and had sex with his wife when she was on her period. If that family was so fucking religious. And I'm like, okay, it's like, and now there was this big giant, they called it a funeral yesterday. And so the story was, kind of goes something like this. Yesterday, Charlie Kirk's funeral was held at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. I have never been to State Farm Stadium, but I was at the arena next to it, which was held the overflow crowd. 2006, I went to Arizona to be with my mom at the time, and she and her husband owned a computer repair shop there. And what happened was they got these free tickets to go see a Detroit Red Wing game at Glendale Arena. Back then it was called jobbing.com Arena. It was a website designed to find jobs. And what happened was it was half and half Red Wing and Coyote fans. And the funny thing was, some years afterward, the Coyotes had lots of financial troubles. I think they played their last game in like 2021 or so, and then they moved. So here's what happened in their final years in Arizona. They actually played in the smallest arena in all pro sports, Mullet Arena. Yep, that was the name of it. And it only sat about 5,000 people. It was actually built for college hockey. And what happened was the owner was trying to sell it and get the team to move, but the NHL actually said, we want a team in Phoenix. We don't give a flying fuck if your team can't get people in the stands. And so I guess the story is he's going to build a brand new arena. Meanwhile, he sold the current Coyotes to a guy from Utah. So the current Coyotes are now playing in Utah at Salt Lake City. And it's just called something like Utah Hockey Club. Yeah, generic name. Of course, they couldn't be the Coyotes because the Coyotes are going to stay in Phoenix, in Arizona. Anyway. So back to what I was talking about. So the situation in regards to Charlie Kirk. So the rest of the story was that Charlie, the funeral was very long. It was like it was not even a real funeral. It was more like a, how do I put it nicely? It was more of a rally than an actual speech than an actual funeral. I mean, there was no preacher there to officiate the ceremonies. It was all one speaker after another. It started off with some shitty Christian band playing some really shitty music, and I didn't see anybody bowing in prayer or none of that stuff. It was a rally, not a funeral. And there was no casket or no urn, for that matter. It's like, what the fuck is this? And Donald Trump was there. He was standing up there and saying that he hates his enemies. And then there was Erica Kirk, his widow, who is now going to continue running Turning Point. And she was saying, one of the best things about Charlie was that he, when he died, nobody took to the streets and protested. It was peaceful, and people went to church, and they opened their Bible for the first time in years. And oh my God. Charlie did a lot of stuff that I think the Bible does not talk about and did not approve of. Charlie was a racist. He was a homophobe. he judged others. And, the story with Jesus was he told a bunch of guys who were throwing stones to punish people. He was saying, he who is without sin may cast the first stone. And everybody, dropped their stones. That's what Christianity should be about. Not judging people. Even though I know I can be very vicious towards people like Trump. But we got to do this, folks. We got to do it because people like Trump and Charlie Kirk, Charlie was a very evil man. Oh, but he was a good husband, and Erica's a widow now. She's worth $12 million. She has, they're not hurting. And what's even worse is the fact that, Sinclair, the TV station owner, they're telling Jimmy Kimmel, we're not going to air your show until you give money to the Kirk family and Turning Point. Fuck you, Sinclair. Fuck them and their 2-fucking-bit operation. I've said this once. I'll say it again. I know. I've been to church. Folks, I've been, and every time I've been to church, I quit. All because not because I hate God, I hate the people. I dealt with preachers who judged me. I dealt with preachers who asked me personal questions that were inappropriate. I've dealt with, a youth pastor who, had his henchman asking me personal questions. And he ended up committing suicide because he robbed his church of $500,000. He lived a lavish lifestyle. Off of the backs of poor people. And if the death of Charlie Kirk is going to make me go back to church, it ain't going to happen. Sorry, not sorry. This is my Sundays, folks. Folks, I get up most mornings at 3:30 because of my job. I have to be at work at 5 a.m. I work usually from 5 a.m. till 3 in the afternoon, depending on how much work we have. Sometimes a little earlier. And sometimes I have to come in on Saturday because there's too much shit to do. And as I've mentioned in past podcasts, one guy quit and another guy was fired. And they never replaced them because of Trump and his tariffs. So, because, yes, we're an American company, but the materials that we use aren't from America. Our paper, we have paper from Canada. Our ink is, from all over the place. Our machines are from Germany and in Switzerland. You understand? This is what Trump is doing. He wants all of our stuff to be made right here, but guess what? It ain't happening. This is the guy who ran Atlantic City into the ground, and now he's doing it to Vegas because now there's hardly any tourism. People from Canada aren't coming here. People from other countries are scared to come here. They're scared that, they're going to get bullied out of our country. I mean, it just goes on and on. And then, first of all, God bless Howard Stern. I've been a fan of his forever and ever, even though, I think he's slowing down a little bit, but, it does sound like he might re-sign with Sirius XM for another 5. Who knows? I mean, like I've said, it is what it is with him. But anyway, so the story with Howard is that this morning he has said that he doesn't want to talk about politics on the show. He thinks that politics are kind of a, bore his listeners. And so the story was, this morning on the Stern Show, he came to the aid of Jimmy Kimmel. Howard and Jimmy have been good pals for years, and he didn't mention much about Trump. But what he talked about was the fact that the FCC was going after Jimmy because of what he said about Donald Trump. And, Howard did say that he will defend Jimmy by one thing, and that is he just dropped Disney Plus from his streaming. He's not going to watch Disney Plus anymore, which means no more Bachelor for him. Good. Yeah, he even started by saying that he was angry at ABC, because they did the most despicable thing ever, and that was the fact that now they're putting old people on The Bachelor. And, nothing like a cute 19-year-old girl with flawless skin, not one piece of was cottage cheese on her ass, none of that stuff. Nice big boobs, nice tight body. And then here she is dating grandpa, somebody who is old enough to be her granddad. But anyway, in all seriousness, Howard said that he does like Disney, and who doesn't? Disney is a great company, always has been. And unfortunately, he mentioned that every time Howard's dad had extra money to invest with, he would always put it in Disney stock because Disney had always been a well-run company. And I agree. Disney, there's hardly anything negative you can say about Disney. But Disney fucked up by what they did to Jimmy Kimmel. They paid Donald Trump. Donald Trump tried to sue them for a lot of money because of what George Stephanopoulos said about him. And, they settled and, was it $16 million? And same thing with CBS, because, of course, CBS and Paramount, they were stuck in this merger deal, and now Disney has done it again because of the fact that a lot of their affiliates were going to drop Jimmy Kimmel, and they're like, yeah, Jimmy needs to apologize to Charlie Kirk. Jimmy didn't say a goddamn thing about Charlie Kirk. They attacked Trump. He attacked Trump by saying that, he attacked Trump because Trump, when asked what he felt about Charlie Kirk, he changed the topic to his Rose Garden bullshit. Yeah, let's raise cause inflation. Let's give tax breaks to the wealthy. Oh, but it's going to trickle down. No, it's not. The reality is Donald Trump is fucking up this country. And Jimmy Kimmel was right by attacking him because Donald is self-centered. The only person on this earth who Donald Trump cares about is Donald Trump. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about Donald Trump and the fact that he wants to put this stupid UFC fight at the White House on Christmas Day. Oh my God. I was really hoping that when they did this UFC WWE merger, the company would be much better than this, and they're not. There's still a bunch of stooges for the Republican Party. And of course, I mean, well, yeah, Vince McMahon's gone. I mean, thank God. I mean, he was an asshole. Nobody, and, he had a long history of sexually assaulting women and screwing over wrestlers and, busting the unions and all that shit. You see, the reason why Howard went and came to, Jimmy's defense was because the FCC was after him too. The FCC told, Mel Karmazin, the guy behind Infinity Broadcasting, who was his boss. Now, for you people who don't understand, we all know, the story with Howard was that many years ago, he was under, so the story was the FCC and Howard never got along. And these people, these religious nuts, tried to get him fined, and they were stuck with several $1 million of fines and all that shit. So what happened was Mel Karmazin said, I'm going to pay the fines. I'm not going to fire you. I'm not going to get rid of you. I'm going to map and tell these people, look, yes, here's a couple $1 million. Now get off our fucking backs. Because he knew that Howard was going to make up for it. And look at all the advertising dollars the Stern Show has made over the years. Yes, there's a lot of big corporations who want nothing to do with Howard. Fuck them. Boycotts work. Years ago, I remembered when, so the story was there was this asshole, Bill Johnson. I think I told you the story, but I'll tell you again. He's the head of this organization called the American Decency Association. They're based in Fremont, which is by Muskegon. Baby food capital of the world, and he's the town's biggest baby. Bill allegedly paid people on SSI, Social Security, like 10 cents an attack letter to Howard's advertisers. And one advertiser claimed that they got two of the same letter from two different people, so he called one of them, and he said, yeah, I'm on Social Security, I live on a fixed income, so this is what I do. I don't even know who Howard is. And Bill, for years, had this Howard Stern information and action page that was loaded with, all these letters from advertisers saying, yeah, we're not going to, Howard, it does not represent who we stand for here at, and he'd bleep out the names. And, that's the problem. These right-wingers, they're soulless. They don't want to mention who they are because they know that boycotts work. In Disney, they only own a small handful of TV stations. All the affiliates are owned by big corporations, mostly big corporations like Sinclair and Nexstar. Nexstar, by the way, is in the middle of a $6 billion merger with Tegna, which of course, Tegna owns WZZM 13 here in town, while Nexstar owns the other ABC affiliate in Grand Rapids, which is WOTV Channel 41, basically out of Bell Creek, but, So, what I'm trying to say is, so anyway, if this merger happens, and I think it's going to happen, Trump will go ahead and, approve this merger because it's going to be less news and less viewpoints for people so people could have a viewpoint. And that's what it all boils down to, folks. Let's force people into being thinked for. So, anyway, I wish I knew more about Jimmy Kimmel, but I agree with Howard. Try not to do business with ABC right now. And for me, it pisses me off that, the Detroit Lions, excuse me, they're playing tonight against Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens. And guess who's carrying the game? It's a Monday Night Football game on ESPN, and I think ABC's got it too. I'm not going to watch it. Number one, it's past my bedtime, and of course, it pissed me off that it wasn't on Sunday afternoon, which would have given me a bigger excuse to avoid that stupid funeral. Of course, my dad my father made me watch part of it because he's a Trumper. Of course, my father lives with me, sadly, and But you see, folks, that's the way it is. People need to realize that Trump is not your friend, and he lied to get back into the White House because he went after the gullible, and sometimes the gullible is what, they end up becoming our enemy because they don't know better. And heaven forbid that we vote for Kamala because, we don't want a black woman in the White House, let alone somebody who calls herself black and is really part Jamaican and part Indian. I don't give a fuck. Judge a person about what they're going to do in the White House. Joe Biden was a great president, folks. Obama was a good president. They were the two best presidents in my lifetime. But the Republicans are going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's what we need to do. Vote in every fucking election, not just the presidency, not just for the governor. Know how your government works and realize that voting blue no matter who isn't going to get you anywhere. Don't allow others to think for you when it comes to politics. Think for yourself. Use your brain. And that's what I have to say about that. Because look at what we're going through now. And the FCC has already said, we're going to throw more people under the bus. You can't attack Donald Trump. Because look at what happened with Bush. When George W. Bush was president of the United States, look at what happened. Stern got thrown under the bus because of the Janet Jackson nip slip bullshit. And of course, there was there was also the Dixie Chicks. They were thrown under the bus too because Natalie Maines spoke up for herself. And she was ashamed that she came from the same state as George W. Bush came from, and everyone applauded. And because, it was in England. Folks, and look at what happened after all this. One, the Dixie Chicks won several Grammys, and the lack of radio play did not kill their careers. But then, the company that first kicked them off their stations, which is Cumulus, they eventually ended up bankrupt. And the assholes who banned the Dixie Chicks, they were Lou Dickey was his name. He ended up fired because he made bad business decisions. He invested in a bunch of really bad country music formats called Nash FM. Nash became a big bomb in the ratings everywhere. And now Cumulus is having to shut down a lot of stations, including a couple in Muskegon. They even closed down WTRX in Flint. That was one of Dave Barber's old stations. Dave actually tried to buy the station, I think, 35 years ago or so. Anyway, but it ended up becoming sports for many years. So the point of the matter is that we need to stay strong through all this. And truth be told, boycotts work. If you do watch the game tonight, folks, if you do watch ABC tonight or any ABC channel, look at the sponsors. Boycott them. And maybe you should tell, even give out a list of who's advertising. And tell them you won't do business with them until Jimmy Kimmel comes back. And maybe, same with Sinclair and Nexstar. I can name you a couple of sponsors on Wood TV8 right now. Service Professor, Kitchens by Katie. But yeah, don't do business with these people until Jimmy Kimmel comes back. Period. End of story. Good day and good luck. Keep up the fight, people. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.